Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com again, and I got the idea for today's video while I was doing my 3-card reading on my Instagram feed this morning, so I thought I'd use the same 3 cards for the purpose of today's video. I think today's video will probably be most beneficial to those of you who are learning tarot or haven't been reading the cards for very long. It might also be of general interest to someone who's just basically curious about tarot in general and wants to get a glimpse of understanding into how the cards might apply meaning to someone's life. And of course, I'd like to think that the video would be interesting to a veteran reader because it's always interesting to see how someone else goes about interpreting the cards. But I think generally, this video will be geared more as an instructional tarot video. When a querent or a client requests a reading, they often have a particular question in mind. I refer to the question as the intent. When there is a question or intent, the reader's job is to interpret the cards as they relate to that intent. The cards are read to address the particular question being asked. Depending on the question, the cards may be interpreted in different ways. It's the reader's job to relate and interpret the information on the cards to address a particular intent in a way that makes it most relevant to the querent's life, and their current situation. Before I get too involved with the reading, I would like to take a moment to remark on the deck that I chose. When most individuals are starting out, they usually begin in the Waite Smith tradition, and these are the cards that many people think of when they think of tarot cards. This particular deck was recently published in Germany by AG Müller, I think in 2016, and it's as true a version of the original PMA style of cards from 1910 as we'll probably ever get. And notice the crackled backs. This morning, while I was doing my Instagram feed, the intent or the question for the day was today's disconnect. It was a very simple intent. I do my daily Instagram readings for the collective us, for those individuals who read them. These particular cards were intended to address what might be the one thing or the things that cause us to take pause today. What is it that causes us not to feel quite right about something in the course of today? The cards drawn were the 4 of Swords, the 3 of Swords, and the 10 of Cups. Now, you want to talk about the elephant in the room. There's no getting around the 3 of Swords in this spread. It's right smack dab in the center of this arrangement, and undoubtedly will be the card that catches a client's attention right off the bat. I mean, obviously, it's a card that suggests a source of anxiety, great emotional duress. At the very least, it's a major buzzkill. And this particular card is flanked by self-retrospection on one side and the expression of great joy or satisfaction or achievement on the other side. So the suggestion then is that today's disconnect has to do with a conflict between our inward feelings and outward expression. Are we being confronted with extremes? Should, in quotation marks, should we be happy about something, but we're not? And should is the key word here, because very often what should be is not what is. At the very least, we see a polar contrast in emotions. We have, extreme sadness and elation, very, happiness. Is the inner feeling of, one of regret or guilt nagging at us, preventing us to feel the joy that by all outward appearances should be our typical response? Guilt robs us of joy and is a major killjoy, Might guilt be the inner voice admonishing us, that we didn't do enough when we had the chance to do enough for something, Guilt addresses regret, and while it's not constructive to focus and dwell on guilt, it does mean that we have a conscience. Feelings of guilt or regret can be worked out by taking steps to remedy the situation, to own the situation, and finally face or accept the situation. This process allows us to move beyond, to release the burden which in turn allows us the ability to feel and live without the burden of negative thinking. That is one way to interpret the cards based on that particular intent. But what if these same 3 cards were drawn for someone who came with a different question or intent? Say they're in a relationship, and they want to know if the relationship will be working out. Well, the first thing I do in that situation is have them take some responsibility for the relationship by changing the nature of the question to, what can I do to bring about the best possible outcome in this relationship? Without making that change to the question, the client doesn't accept responsibility for the outcome of the relationship at all and gains nothing by the insights from the cards. By limiting the intent to a yes or no question, it's as though they don't want any responsibility to make the relationship work, and off they'll go to pursue another one if this one, if the cards say this one won't work out. The issue is, do they want the relationship to work out or not? And if yes, the cards will suggest a course of action that the individual might consider to bring out the best possible outcome. In this case, then, the same 3 cards suggest that the relationship has great potential to work out and bring satisfaction to the individual's life, but it will not be without some heartache, which requires some soul searching if the client wants to invest the effort in working through it by addressing the problem in the relationship. The second 2 cards, the 3 of Swords and the 10 of Cups, are extremes in emotion. The interpreter might suggest that this relationship has a tendency to fluctuate between extremes. It might be a kind of roller coaster relationship. To paraphrase Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, when it's good, it's very, very good. And when it's bad, it's horrid. The number of swords in the spread, 2 out of 3, in the context of a relationship question, might suggest issues with communication between the partners, or the possibility even of legal struggles that might be causing great anxiety or stress. The potential for a successful relationship is there, but it will require self-reflection to know if the individual is willing to face the issues and see it through to its conclusion. Is pursuing this relationship worth the effort to the client? Okay, let's ask another question. Let's apply another question to these 3 cards. What if a client has lost her job or has relocated and has been struggling with finding work and wants to know if there is relief in sight? Again, I'd redirect the question to one where the client takes responsibility and owns the situation that they're in, to find out what she can do to optimize opportunities and avoid pitfalls. Again, we see extremes between the 3 of Swords and the 10 of Cups. As if to say, in the course of your job search, it's either going to be feast or famine, You're either going to have many opportunities available to you or none at all. Now there's no getting around the 3 of, there's no getting around the 3 of Swords, no matter how we, no matter what the question or how we interpret the cards, because the 3 of Swords in the Waite Smith tradition, is a card that we can't fluff out all that much to give it a happy spin, because the client isn't stupid and will undoubtedly see that the card is one of distress, signaling a hard time. So in the case of the job hunter who has relocated, it very clearly illustrates the challenging time that the client is experiencing. It validates her present condition. The 4 Swords might suggest that she reevaluate how she's presenting herself to potential employers. Might she revamp her resume, as an example, or assess how she's presenting herself? Is she, showing up to interviews in a professional manner with a clean presentation, neat and tidy, prepared to answer questions? Did she do her homework with the company? The self-assessment that the 4 Swords suggests could be an indicator that the client might need to consider the ways that she could better present herself to prospective employers. It may be that she needs to do more homework to understand the company's philosophy or their target goals. Maybe self-reflection could include the scrutiny of whether or not she looks like someone who might fit in with the company's image. All is not lost, because the 10 Cups show that these obstacles can be overcome and, in fact, suggest the potential for a very rewarding and satisfied outcome if she takes these points into consideration. Now let's try another scenario with these 3 cards. Say we have a client who tells us that he was married or in a committed relationship for many years and he's recently lost his partner to death. Their life together was everything happy life could ever hope to be, but he can't get past his grief and suffering. He wants to know, what can he do to feel joy again? Is his life over? He feels as though he may never be happy again. Now, this is a scenario where the cards might be approached a little differently and with more sensitivity and compassion. The crux of this question is the loss of the loved one and the despair that accompanies the loss, and clearly that's the Three of Swords. In this case, the figure in the card of the Four Swords is a figure, of a person lying in repose on a coffin, clearly making the reference to the recent death of his partner. The Three Swords very clearly indicates the degree of personal suffering that has accompanied his loss. In this case, as in the previous example, the cards validate and acknowledge the difficult time that the client is currently experiencing. It offers validation for what the client is feeling and that he indeed has had a great life with his partner, as the 10 Cups illustrate, and it contrasts significantly to his current situation or state of mind of deep suffering. Now, while it's good to validate a client's feelings, and sometimes validation is very important to a client to verify that their feelings are legitimate, but the experienced reader will do more than merely validate feelings. It's the interpreter's job to push his or her understanding of the cards to take it beyond merely validating a client's feelings. There's always a connection to be made between the question and the cards, and the experienced reader will be able to bring those connections to the forefront. Now, aside from referencing the recent death, the reflective nature of the Four Swords can be doing double duty in this case, suggesting that the client is looking at himself with a very critical eye, which is the thing contributing to his own suffering, like maybe guilt for something he once did or said. I might ask him, well, what if the tables were reversed and you passed on and you had the same wonderful life with your partner, but after you died, she's tormenting herself because, on one particular Tuesday in 1974, she was unkind to you or caused you some kind of suffering that led her to fail you in some way. You would scream from heaven or the realm of the great beyond that you forgave her decades ago, and you want her to let go of her regret or guilt so that she can live again and enjoy what's left of her life, and also, not think back on your relationship with pain and suffering, but look back with the joy, like the 10 of Cups illustrates. In that way, by using that, the client can be made to understand that he's allowed to forgive himself for any shortcomings in that relationship, and open the door to either feel love again or at least feel joy. In this case, the 10 of Cups is another card that could possibly be doing double duty, because not only might it provide the comfort of knowing that joy is in the cards for him eventually, it might also be a suggestion that it would serve him well to be social, to surround himself with family and friends that he loves and participate in their lives. Surrounding himself with supportive and loving people would be a very healing course of action to take. The new happiness he creates for himself might not look the same as it did before, but feeling that he has permission to release the self-imposed emotional barriers is very liberating, and spending time in a social circle that brings comfort is a constructive activity that distracts the mind from focusing on the sad and retrains it to experience and be open to the happiness that remains. And finally, there will be times when a client has no particular question and wants a general reading, like, asking things like what they have to look forward to within the next few weeks, what pitfalls are to be avoided, and what opportunities might be taken advantage of. Again, as in all the previous examples I gave today, there is a general suggestion with the Four of Swords to scrutinize his or her own actions carefully, and in this case, to consider what damage might be done if they don't. In a general reading, the Three Swords and the 10 Cups, without a particular question, might be interpreted as the two alternate endings of how a situation can play out, depending on the querent's own choices and actions. This is where the three cards, all being of the minor arcana, would jump out with me jump out at me with some significance and cause me to say, that it's in great likelihood that the events of the next few weeks will not unduly be influenced by external considerations, and that the querent himself or herself has the greatest impact on the outcome of, the next couple of weeks. If one or more of the three cards were of the major arcana, it would occur to me to say that his or her actions will make a difference to those other individuals who also figure into the equation and are in a position to influence the outcome of the situation. Now, a general reading is a fascinating dynamic. In all these other examples, the client had a question, and the reader interpreted the cards in relation to the specific question. But in the case of a general reading, consider this point. The reader, or the interpreter of the cards, will speak in general terms, and the querent is the one who will find relevance between what is being spoken and the events of his or her own life. In each of our lives, we have a surface reality, the reality that is perceived by others. But we each have subsurface realities as well, the little dramas, at work and home that are playing themselves out at any given point, at any point in time, or the concerns that we privately have about something and how it will play out, either at work or, anything. These are the experiences that the querent will make connections to. In most cases, during a general reading, the querent knows or already can apply what is being said to those subsurface issues that are being played out in his or her own head. So the cards generally are always relevant. There will be instances when a general reading in particular, where the client will walk away feeling the interpretation was not relevant to his or her life. And there are a few reasons for this. There's always the possibility that the reader failed to deliver an accurate message. That's a possibility. There is also the possibility that the interpretation is in reference to something that hasn't happened yet. Could be something that will be shortly happening, something on the cusp of happening. It could be also that the client is just not making connections between what is being said and what is, happening in his or her own life. Now, one thing that I save for the end for all of these scenarios, all these particular questions, is something called the quint card. It's short for quintessential. Now, some readers use it and some readers don't. I sometimes do. I always observe what the quint card is, but I may not always mention it. Now, in this case, for all of the readings, for all of the questions that were presented by these three cards in this video example, if you notice, the 4 and the 3 equals 7 plus 10 is 17. So the quint card would be the summation card, the 17, which is the star. Now, the star card is a very hopeful card, which reinforces the message of the 10 of cups, So, in all those scenarios, whether the person wants to know if the relationship will work out, or if, they'll find a job, or if they'll ever find happiness again after a death or a breakup of a relationship, the quint card in this case, the star suggests that there is, greater potential. It reinforces the 10 of cups, that there is, after one gets through this stuff, there is, the very strong likelihood that a very satisfactory experience or situation or outcome will be the case. Now, by the same token, what if we added up these numbers and the numbers total to say something like 16, the Tower? Now, that would be in opposition to the message of the 10 cups. The Tower card would suggest, maybe, pack it up and call it a day, But I wouldn't, in that case, I would not mention the quint card at all. Instead, I would still deliver the message of the Tower, for example, if that were the culmination card, the quint card. I would, stress the importance of how negative thinking or, could affect, or negative actions could affect the outcome of a situation to be less than desirable. Let me put it this way. In the case of someone who's looking, is this relationship going to work out? And if the quint card were the Tower card, it might occur to me to say there, to suggest strongly that there might be more negative aspects to this relationship than, than positive. Or in the case of the person who relocated and is looking for a job, I might say, well, I won't say that the Tower card is the Quint card, but I would say that, there's going to be a need for major, revisions in your life, a reconstruction, a reevaluation, of how you do things. You may need to relocate again, or, you may need to make real strong changes. And in the case of the gentleman who lost his partner of many years, I would stress the importance of getting out of, the negative cycle of beating himself up, if that were the case, or just focusing on the sadder aspects of missing and longing for the individual, because that is, not focusing on the positive memories of the relationship and not moving forward with other people in your life will prevent him from, having a happy life, and so I would strongly urge, positive reinforcement in that case. But in this case, the Quint card is the hope, is the star card. And so for all the scenarios, I would definitely point it out that was the Quint card, and that it supports the Ten of Cups in suggesting that, the likelihood and the potential for a very good outcome will be experienced, provided they do the legwork that they have to do, or that they think they need to do. At any rate, this video is a little bit longer than I expect it to be, so I'll end it here for now. Please ask questions or comment on aspects that I touched on that might need clarification. And as always, let me know what you want me to cover in future videos, because I want to serve you. So I want to know what it is you want to see. Until next time, thank you for watching, and peace.